Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 448, The Initiative.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Game Toppers make an amazing product. In fact, they make more than one amazing product. They make lots of amazing products. A lot of different size tables, toppers for your tables, a lot of awesome accessories for those toppers, or accessories just for your table if you don't have one of their toppers. They have the best neoprene mats on the market, like hands down the best you can find. Quality is awesome. The artwork is amazing. They're just fantastic. They also make a bunch of other accessories for their game toppers. And they call them game toppers to top your table, but you can also now get legs for your toppers. So you can actually have one of these awesome game toppers without putting it on top of a table. It can serve as its own table, especially when you add the dining leaves for your topper. You can play games, you can eat food, nothing you can't do with a game topper from GameToppersLLC.com.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I am Logan Howard.
I am Andy Holliday.
I'm Douglas Stewart.
I'm Nathan Howard.
And I'm Dave Holliday.
We are Meeple Nation, and we talk about board games. If you want to catch up with any of us, you can check out our website, meeplenation.com. If you'd like to get a hold of us, meeplenation@gmail.com. We'd like to have a shout out to our patrons on Patreon because they have decided to send some of their hard-earned money our way, and we thoroughly appreciate it. If you feel so inclined, you are invited to do so as well.
This week we are wrapping up our discussion of puzzle games with a game called The Initiative. The Initiative is a unique cooperative board game of story, strategy, and code breaking. It lets players take on the role of teenagers in 1994 who have found a mysterious board game called The Key. Not only will they play the key, but players will help the teens through a pivotal chapter of their lives by following a series of missions linked together via an interactive comic book. The game's campaign is broken into a number of chapters, each taking 30 to 60 minutes, each starting with you reading a page of the comic book. The story advances even if players fail a mission, but winning may provide a reward in the future. Each chapter builds on the knowledge and story from previous chapters, weaving a narrative, code-breaking, and mystery into one thrilling game experience.
Does the year 1994 have any significance in it?
So far, not really, other than maybe the level of technology of 1994 just in the story, perhaps.
Okay.
But you never know. One of the things about this game is literally everything can be a clue that you could use at some point.
So that was my other question, because I did not play this game. Did you actually play the game playing the game?
You can't play it any other way. Yeah, that's how you play the game.
So you have to play the game to play the game, The Initiative.
The majority of the story part is the comic part that you read prior to each chapter, and then you play the game as though the characters are playing the game. The meat of the game is the actual game that the teenagers are playing in 1994.
Oh, okay, interesting. That's a little head warpy about which game you're playing with that, but
Yeah.
yes.
So this game is designed by Corey Konieczka. He has designed some phenomenal games that I highly enjoy out there. Battlestar Galactica, the Descent games, Mansions of Madness, Star Wars Imperial Assault, which is my all-time favorite game, Star Wars Destiny, Outer Rim, Rebellion. None of those games are like this game.
No, they're really not. This is
something completely different. There's similarities that you'll find between games like Battlestar and some Star Wars games, but this game is just completely different. Going back to your question, Logan, I mean, are we playing the initiative or are we playing the key within the game? And the answer is yes. We're playing both of them, but as we're playing out the roles of these teens in 1994, which we haven't decided if that's anything relevant to the game or not, we're playing on this two-sided mat that will allow the game to play out differently each time. There's hidden rooms in there, and each room is going to have clues that we're going to have to investigate. There's traps. As you go through this game, it evolves. Each time you come back and play another chapter, you've discovered some more information. Your characters have developed a little bit in that one sheet of paper. Some of them have some dark voices in their head that we're not quite sure what's going on there. As the chapters evolve, I wouldn't call it a legacy game because you're not changing anything. you're just playing what's there. The game state just changes each time you play. The pitch of the game didn't really excite me, but actually playing the game, I did find the way that the game works to be a little bit intriguing. And we played 4 games in one night. So we went boom, 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 boom. And by the 4th game, I was ready to be playing something else. I felt that the game and the way the mechanics worked, it was okay. As far as some of these exploring games and puzzle games where you're trying to solve mysteries or clues or whatever, and in this game, you're very much trying to decipher a clue each game. I think it came together pretty good. When you're playing those games one right after another, it did start to get a little bit old. But you take a break and you come back to it a week later, 2 weeks later, and you can get right back into that sync of playing this game and going through the story. Find out what those dark voices in everybody's heads really mean.
I liked the fact that it was the different main puzzle that we were trying to figure out. So as you're going through the rooms, you're trying to find clues, and the clue tokens will have icons on the back side of them. So you'll go in, you try to search for clues, you'll flip those clues over. If any of those, they almost look like runes, but symbols, they match any of the symbols that are on the clue board, then you get to reveal a portion of what the answer is, or what we're trying to solve.
It's almost Wheel of Fortune style
Really
puzzle
is.
board.
Yeah, it's kind of like a cipher in Wheel of Fortune style.
That was a part of the game that I definitely enjoyed. I felt like the process of discovering clues and then using those clues to uncover that little board was really satisfying.
Yeah, I agree. And once we got a few of those opened up, for the most part, I think we had it figured out. You would kind of expect that for the first chapter. But then they had numbers for another one, right? And so it wasn't always just words. You were trying to figure out a pattern of numbers. And I like the fact that they changed it up. That did break up the monotony a little bit. I agree, Nathan, by the 4th play, it was getting a little monotonous. But the fact that at least the main clue that we were trying to do and the main puzzle was a little bit different. One thing I didn't care for, though, is it introduced rules halfway through what we were trying to do. And so to have to sit there through reading rules and new rules that get added to the game, that's always really difficult to sit through.
Right. And it wasn't like a legacy game where we're going to give you this paragraph.
Right.
It was 2 pages of rules that we all had to sit through and read together.
It completely broke the flow of play.
Absolutely.
When that happened. And for me, that was checkout mode. We had played 3 of the missions. It introduced rules. Like you said, it wasn't just a quick set. Okay, keep playing the game. It was like, nope, you're going to take a break. And in the rule book, it says, do not proceed until you have read and understand all of the rules on this sheet. And it's a double-sided sheet that introduces all this stuff. It was like full stop for me. The momentum was gone.
Yeah, I think that totally killed our experience that night. We were running into the being a little bit monotonous, but once we hit that, nobody was involved anymore.
Right. It did kind of make it die down. But I wonder how different it would have been if we weren't just trying to go chapter to chapter to chapter. You know what I'm saying? If we were ending at that point anyway, and that was going to be the beginning of our next play or something a week later, like you say, Nate, like I bet it would have felt totally different.
Yeah, that's probably true. The one nice thing about this game is it does play quick. So playing a couple of chapters is really not out of the question on a game night. And maybe this would be something that you could throw in as like a filler game that plays in about an hour for a chapter.
30 to 60 minutes.
It could be something that, oh yeah, the other game table is almost done. They got maybe 45 minutes left of the game they're playing. Let's just pull this out. Let's continue the story and play one chapter. Maybe that's the better way to play it. Like Dave said, maybe that wouldn't have killed the momentum because it did. Doug's right. Even once we got done with the rules, I think all of us were pretty much done by that time.
Even if it was the last game that we were playing, that rule interruption interrupted in the middle of the game. And as such, if there was any desire to go into the 5th chapter, it was all put to bed right then and there.
So let's talk a little bit about the actual gameplay and what some of the components look like and the different actions that you can take. There are 4 different actions that you can take during the game. There's run, gather, intel, and regroup. In order to take an action, you have to play a card on top of that action card. The card you play has to be a higher numbered card than the card that was played previously on top of that pile. So if there's not a card, you can play any card you want. However, if there's a 4 on there, I can no longer play a 1, 2, 3, or 4 on that pile. Those stacks of cards can get to where you can't take that action anymore just because you don't have the right numbered cards in your hand. And I found that happen quite a bit. It seemed like some of us had really high cards and no low cards, and the other few people had really low cards and no high cards. I know that happened to me almost every time.
it was kind of a cool mechanic. Like you're talking about, Andy, I know right with the very first play that we did, Doug went first, played a 3 or a 4. A 4 on the run action. And then Andy's like, well, I can't do anything. I'm not going to be able to go anywhere. But the nice thing is you're not out of luck if your numbers are all lower than that, or because each teenager, each character has their own unique ability that they can do also. So you have to discard 2 cards in order to use that special ability. For example, the character that I played, I was able to discard 2 cards and then move any player, myself or any of the others, up to 5 spaces, which was kind of cool, right? It's actually a little bit better than the run action because the run action only allows you to move 3 spaces. The other abilities that you guys had were all pretty powerful, good abilities as well.
Yeah, I like games that have the asymmetrical powers for the different characters. It makes it unique. It increases the replayability for me. Next time, maybe I want to try a different character and just see how using those powers and see how they work. I would like it if it had more than just the 4 teenagers. I know that's kind of difficult when you have a comic book that's following the story of these kids, but it would have been fun to have a few more options. I think that would increase the replayability also.
I want to go back to playing in action. I thought this mechanic was great, where you had to splay the cards up. So the next card had to be a higher card, And it got to the point where players had to work together. You had to be very conscious of the cards you had. You couldn't say what card you had, but you could say, hey, I'm going to make a big jump there, or it'd be ideal if I go next, or it's going to be crappy if I go because anything I do is going to probably cap out one of those rows. So players have to manage that, and they have to work together. And for a cooperative game, I think that kind of forcing that cooperation was very well done in this game. And the fact that you can do the regroup, and the regroup action allows you to wipe all the cards out of one of those 3 sections. But the problem is with the regroup action, it can never be wiped out itself. So you want to be very conscious and very aware of what you're putting in that regroup. And honestly, the games go pretty quick, so you're not going to regroup a ton of times during the game. But that regroup action and how it works with the others, I thought was very well done. And I felt that it really linked the game together and embraced that cooperative feel.
Yeah, it was a cooperative efficiency puzzle.
Absolutely.
And it was really fun. That was one of the aspects of this game that I really did enjoy. Playing those cards in ascending order on all of those action spots and trying to figure out, almost kind of min-maxing how the group as a whole could explore the map, gather as many clues as possible, and try to solve the puzzle before you have to reshuffle that deck and introduce those time cards. Because once you've run through all of those cards, you have to shuffle up that discard pile. You're gonna put in these special cards that get added. As you're going through that deck, if 3 of those cards get drawn, or 3 of those symbols, I should say, because one of the cards has a double symbol on it, then it's game over. You're done at that point. So players have to be really efficient. You can't just burn through that deck of cards. You can't just constantly be tossing 2 on your turn to take your special action or wasting cards that are in your hand. You really do have to think about how you're going to be efficient about using them to maximize what you do out on the map.
And the first time you go through that deck, every time at the end of your turn, you're going to have to draw up your hand size to 4 cards. After you go through that deck the first time and you shuffle in those time cards, that drawing becomes optional. You have to wager in. I don't have any cards, but if I draw a card, there's a chance that I'm going to have to put one of those time cards into the discard pile. Then once one's in there, then it becomes an even greater risk because one of those cards could have the 2 time symbols on it. Or if that card even comes up first, then it's like, well, the next time card we draw is game over. So you have to be very conscious of that deck the second time. And like you were saying, Doug, you have to be very conscious going through that deck the first time. Because, yeah, if we burn through the cards, that card stack is pretty limited. With 4 players going through it, it goes quick.
And I don't know if you guys felt this, but the game board itself is a building with a bunch of rooms that you're going through and you're trying to find the clues, and you may find traps that may end up on the cards and have different effects in the game. But I felt like once we got to where we had reshuffled and we were our second time through that stack, I felt like we weren't anywhere close to on some of those chapters to getting finished. Like I would look at how far we were on that main puzzle and how many clues we had revealed versus, the fact that we'd gone through so many cards and we still had so many clues on the board. I really felt like, oh my gosh, I mean, we got to hurry, but at the same time we need cards to do everything. And it's so dangerous to draw those cards.
We totally got our butts kicked.
Very much so. And you have that option that we can, as a group, if we feel like we have enough information, we can choose to solve the puzzle. And if we solve the puzzle, if we do it correctly, then that's great. However, if we don't do it, we lose the scenario.
Once you shuffle that deck, there definitely was almost this kind of impending sense of doom because you knew that you were going to draw those cards. And in at least a couple of the games that we played, we were not close to solving the puzzle. I think as a general rule of thumb, that's why I don't really like this type of timer that gets put on the end of a game because it's so random. If those cards get shuffled in and they happen to be at the top of that deck, I didn't feel like we were close to solving those puzzles. And I don't know that a lot of people would be really close to solving those puzzles. And it's just going to be over. If those cards get shuffled toward the bottom, you're going to be able to solve that puzzle with tons of time to spare. And so that sort of wildly swinging timer that this game sort of builds into the cake, I didn't care for that very much.
Yeah, and I think it would be a little bit different if they didn't have that one card that had the 2 time icons on it. Like Nathan said, that once that one comes out, knowing that potentially that next card could be the end. And we did draw that double icon card a couple of times. You're right, Doug. The times that we really got beat, those came up quickly.
And I don't know that would be a big deal if in the rule book it was just like, okay, shuffle the cards up really good, reset your tokens, and try it again. Because that part of the game goes really, really fast. That part is maybe, 15 to 20 minutes maximum. So if you failed and then you just reshuffled and tried it again, I think I'd be a lot more in love with this game. Unfortunately, this is where I think that fail forward storytelling mechanism actually kind of works against it. Because rather than being able to re-attempt the mission and kind of get the satisfaction of solving the puzzle, which is where this game shines, instead the game is kind of telling you, nope, we're going to whisk you on to the next mission. Whether you win or lose, we're going to tell our story and we're going to take you on to the next thing. For me, it just felt a little unsatisfying.
And I get that, but there's no way you can put the rabbit back in the hat, right? Once images have started to be revealed on the clue, you can't unsee them. And so even in the game instructions, it says this is a great game to play again. However, if you've already played it, you're just going to play it with the other people. You play the game normally, but just allow them to do all the discovery and discussion, which is something similar that I did when we played Pandemic Season 1 with you guys. Is I had played it. I'd played it 3 times, and so I was very much aware of what was going to come up and what we needed to do. But I allowed you guys to do all that discussion, and I still played the game as trying to be as effective as I could. But all the decisions, everything that was being upgraded, stickers that were put on the board, was all up to you guys.
It's probably something you should have done with Seafall too. I'm just saying.
What did I do in Seafall that was
taking advantage of us with your knowledge?
I would have really liked to have seen this game almost do a mini time stories thing, right? Where it lets you reset and you can take all the knowledge that you already have, move forward, try it again, solve the puzzle. So you kind of get the satisfaction of solving that puzzle and engaging in that part of the game. And then maybe the story progresses in a branching path based on the number of attempts that it took, rather than a strict win-lose.
To your point, Nathan, I don't know what y'all's problem is, because give me 30 minutes and I won't remember any of it.
Well, I don't know. Once you start to reveal those clues, though, as much as you want to say, okay, I forgot that, as you start to see the letters, you're going to be like, okay, I remember that word. Even for me, who I can forget what I had for breakfast. Once you start to reveal, yeah, there was a plate, there was eggs. Like, oh, yeah, I had eggs and bacon. Once that information starts to come out, your mind's going to recall. And this grandpa brain has really got you, Dave. I don't think it's got you that bad.
Oh, no. Sometimes it feels like it.
It feels like it for sure. But once you start playing again, that stuff comes back.
Discussing along the same lines of what Doug was talking about with the failing forward aspect of this game, I tend to agree with Doug as far as the fact that it was kind of not satisfying. I think it wouldn't be quite to that extent if the story was a little stronger. The story was, for lack of a better term, a little odd for me and kind of hard to get into. I was never into comic books, so maybe that's why. I don't know. Nathan, you read a lot of comic books. Was it kind of odd for you and hard to really immerse yourself into that story, or were you, on the edge of your seat in between every single chapter?
It's only one page, so the ability to draw you into a story in one page. The most fun I had was the voices in the characters' heads as the story progressed. I mean, to draw me in, no. And I totally see the point of you not being able to solve it being very unsatisfying. I think overall, I think it works. I'm looking forward to completing the story because it is a story. And for me, I'll watch a crappy movie to its completion just because I want to have that conclusion.
So how many more movies do you have to watch to finish this story?
All of them.
So how many chapters are there?
So there's 14 chapters, Logan. So we have to play it 10 more times.
Sounds like it should go on your 10 for 10 when I'm at work.
Well, you're at work more times than you're not at work. So 10 for 10s are every night almost.
Which honestly, going through it 10 more times, that's really not unreasonable. That's super easy. I mean, like
2 or 3 nights, right?
Right. I mean, we said, we played 4 games in one night, so that would go fast.
Yeah.
So even though I do have some pretty significant criticisms of this game, I would absolutely still be in it to just finish the story. The story isn't a super engaging part of this game, but I also think that it's important for us to recognize we are probably not the target audience for the story of this game. This is teenagers, and it sort of is
Weren't you all teenagers in 1994?
I was a teenager in 1994.
So
I am not a teenager now, Logan.
But that's the target audience.
Thank you for reminding me how old I am. The story that's being told here, I think, is really being targeted at teenage kids. It's their wrestle. It's what they're going through. And I don't want to undersell that point, because in the right hands, this game could be deeply meaningful to certain people out there who can relate to maybe something that these, fictional characters are going through. I always find it a little neat when a game developer or, someone in the industry tries to create a narrative or do something in such a way that explores that space and attempts to kind of teach lessons or has a moral to the story in that way. In that regard, I think it's probably successful, just not for me because I can't really relate to it.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Doug. It does seem like it's targeted more for a younger audience, but then you still have shows like Stranger Things, pretty much targeting a younger audience, but I've very much have enjoyed.
But doesn't that a lot have to do with the nostalgia factor?
That's a good question. For me, it's kind of funny that the music is one of the nostalgic things that I like the most about Stranger Things. All the other stuff is kind of...
The friends playing D&D in the basement, like, oh, whatever, I didn't have friends.
Yeah, I feel sorry for Will. All he wanted to do was play D&D, and everybody was like going off doing other things.
And all of that is absolutely true, but I don't necessarily get nostalgic vibes from this game.
Absolutely, yeah.
So 1994 has nothing to do with it so far?
No.
Not
That's
really.
lame. Why would they bring that up then?
It might further in the story. Just as far as we've gotten now, no, it doesn't really have any bearing in the game so far.
Logan, you'll have to play all 14 chapters and decipher that yourself.
Maybe it does. Maybe 1994 is a huge part and it's just gone way over our heads. So, dear listener, if you've played this game and by 4th chapter, there's a deep meaning behind the 1994, please let us know how stupid we are.
At meeplenation@gmail.com.
It's interesting. I'm looking at BGG on this, and it's rated 7.7. So it's fairly highly rated.
That has to be because people have completed it.
That's my guess. It's
They've
something
discovered more into it.
I think that's something that we definitely need to do. We need to get through all of it. I mean, I think we've been fairly critical of it. Dave's right. Maybe that's because we played 4 games straight. Maybe it would be different if we hadn't done that. But for it to be that highly rated, that's saying something, I think. So, Doug, what are your final thoughts on this?
I feel like the initiative is full of some great ideas. I think Corey Konieczka has put a lot of thought and energy and effort into some really good design elements. While the story doesn't drag me in, and while I have some criticisms on the fail-forward storytelling and kind of that random timer for the end of the game, it is still good enough that this is one I will absolutely see through to completion. I guess take that for what it's worth. It's good, not great, in my book. I did enjoy those plays. And as long as it doesn't throw another 2 sheets of rules at us in the middle of it, I think we can sail through to the end with no problems.
Nathan, what did you think?
I think we're only a quarter of the way through the dinner. The main course is still to come. So a lot of our criticism could be because we haven't quite experienced the game completely. I'm looking forward to completing it. I still feel like there's more to the game to explore than what we've hit. So I'm enjoying it. Am I super, super enjoying it? No, not really. But I am still intrigued enough to play it through.
By the time we got to our third play, I was wondering, are we going to keep going? I was having fun, but I was at that point ready to move on to another game. For me, that interruption that happened in the middle of the fourth game, that's kind of my point to begin with. Even if it was mid-game, but it was your first play of the game, of the night anyway, I think it'd probably be okay. It wouldn't be quite as impactful. It's very simple so far, but it includes a lot of awesome strategy with the card play, and I enjoy that. I'm kind of with you guys that, yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to finishing this. Overall, it's good, and I want to see how it ends.
Very similar thoughts as you guys, but I think this is a game that you probably play twice. Kind of feeling what you were feeling, Dave. It was by the third play, it was feeling a little monotonous. The actual meat of the game, the gameplay itself, is not real complex. I mean, there's some strategy, there's some cooperative strategy involved on getting clue tokens, and if there are traps involved inside the different rooms and trying to move around. There are some strategies involved, but it's kind of the same thing every single chapter. Though the gameplay was fun, by the time we got through the third and fourth play, it was getting old. Playing it twice and then pulling the game out again a week later or 2 weeks later and playing 2 more games, that's the sweet spot for me, I think. Doing that would be super easy to get through all 14 plays. I would have no problem with that. It's a fun enough game that I would not have a problem. I wouldn't turn my nose up at it as long as it wasn't the third or fourth play of the night. I like some of the strategy with when you play cards. I like the asymmetric powers that the different characters had and how those play into your strategy. The fact that you have to discard 2 cards, which we talked about, that could be a big price, especially once that deck gets reshuffled in your second time through it. I liked it, didn't love it, but I think it has some potential. And that is the initiative.
Until next time.
We'll see you at the yard sale picking up your copy of the initiative.
Wait, because it was so crappy that somebody tried to sell it?
You mean the key?
That's right.
We didn't talk about that at all.
Yeah, probably should scratch that. Because I said this in the story, they buy the game at the yard sale.
I get that now, but like before, it just sounds like, yeah, they're trying to get rid of it. You can find it at any yard sale.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter at Meeple Nation. We also have Instagram
under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Brain Detergent for our music.
You're not going to regroup a ton of times during the game, but I just like to do this with my hand. Apparently, I've done it like 16 times. I could draw. If I draw a card, I'll put one of those time cards. There's a chance I can put one of. I'll have to put. If I draw a card, you'll have to play all 14 chapters.
All 14 chapters, Smear.
You'll have to play all 14 chapters. Damn it.
Kermit the Frog here.
You do it a third time. I'll play all 14 by myself by the time next week comes around.
We'll see you.
Sorry.